Switzerland is full of surprises you probably never heard of, from a landlocked country that somehow has its own merchant navy, to glaciers that feed half of Europe, and a railway tunnel that cuts straight through the heart of the Alps. Did you know Switzerland has not one, but three completely different geographic regions? Or that it holds about 6% of all of Europe's fresh water, despite being smaller than many of its neighbors? And there is even a place where three river systems start and flow into three different seas. Stay tuned. These stunning facts will completely change how you see Switzerland. Let's dive right in. Switzerland has no coastline, but it operates a merchant navy. Switzerland is one of the world's most famous landlocked countries. It has no access to the ocean, no seaports, and no beaches on any sea. And yet, it has its own merchant fleet. Swiss-registered cargo ships sail on the world's oceans under the Swiss flag, even though the country has no shoreline of its own. This unusual setup began for strategic reasons, to secure access to vital goods in times of crisis. So while Switzerland may not touch the sea, its ships still cross it. Switzerland is split into three major geographic regions. Switzerland may look like one big mountain range, but it is actually divided into three distinct zones: the Alps, the Central Plateau, and the Jura Mountains. The Alps dominate the south and center with dramatic peaks and deep valleys. The Central Plateau lies between the Alps and the Jura. It is a gentler landscape of hills, rivers, and cities. The Jura Mountains form a lower forested arc along the northwest, sharing a natural border with France. Each of these regions has its own climate, economy, and lifestyle, all shaping how people live and work across the country. Inside one small country, about 60% of Switzerland is covered by the Alps. Nearly two-thirds of Switzerland is mountainous terrain. From the outside, it looks like a country built entirely of steep slopes and rocky ridges. But here is the twist. Only a small part of the population actually lives in the high Alps. Most people live in valleys and on the plateau, where the land is easier to farm and build on. The result is a country where vast areas are wild, high, and difficult to reach, while everyday life is concentrated in a few places. Habitable zones. Switzerland is home to 48 peaks over 4,000 meters. These peaks make up almost half of the 4,000ers in the entire Alpine range. The Swiss Alps are packed with giants. Among them is the iconic Matterhorn, one of the most recognizable mountains in the world, and Dufourspitze, Switzerland's highest peak. These mountains are not just beautiful. They shape the weather, the rivers, the tourism, and even the culture of the regions around them. 4 official languages are mapped onto the landscape: German, French, Italian, and Romansh, but they are not placed randomly on the map. The language regions closely follow the geography. German is spoken mainly in the central and northern plateau. French dominates the west, beyond certain ridges and river valleys. Italian is spoken in the south, below the Alpine crest. Romansh survives in isolated valleys deep in the southeastern Alps. In many places, mountains literally form the boundaries between language zones, turning geography into a living language border. Switzerland holds about 6% of Europe's freshwater reserves. For such a small country, Switzerland plays a huge role in Europe's water system. Its lakes, rivers, and glaciers store around 6% of all the fresh water on the continent. That is why it is often called the Water Tower of Europe. The snow and ice in the Alps melt slowly, feeding rivers that flow across national borders and supply millions of people with water, power, and irrigation. What happens to Swiss glaciers does not stay in Switzerland. It affects entire regions downstream. Switzerland shares borders with 5 countries, including some on water. Switzerland is surrounded by France, Germany, Austria, Italy, and Liechtenstein. But not all of these borders run over land. Some of them run right through lakes. Lake Geneva is split between Switzerland and France. Lake Constance is shared with Germany and Austria. In some parts, the exact lines are still a matter of debate, but the lakes have been peacefully shared for generations. A boat ride on these waters can quietly take you across several countries without you even noticing. Lake Geneva and Lake Constance are not fully Swiss. Many people assume that Switzerland owns famous lakes like Lake Geneva and Lake Constance. In reality, both are shared. Lake Geneva's southern shore belongs to France, while the northern side belongs to Switzerland. Lake Constance is bordered by Switzerland, Germany, and Austria, and does not have a clearly marked boundary in many areas. When you stand on the shore of these lakes, you are often looking directly at another country. Three major European river systems start in Switzerland. The Alps are not just mountains, they are also the birthplace of major rivers. In Switzerland, the headwaters of the Rhine, the Rhone, and tributaries of the Po all begin. Each of these rivers drains into a different sea. The Rhine flows north into the North Sea, the Rhone flows south into the Mediterranean, and the Po basin flows east toward the Adriatic Sea. That means a single country sends water to 3 different coasts of Europe. The Gotthard Base Tunnel is a masterpiece of engineering, stretching about 57 kilometers under the Alps to form the longest railway tunnel in the world. It connects northern and southern Europe in a straight line, where before trains had to climb steep mountain routes and twist through narrow passes. Now, high-speed trains glide deep under the rock in just a few minutes, turning one of the most intimidating natural barriers in Europe into a smooth ride. Switzerland's lowest point is at the shore of a lake. You might expect the lowest point in Switzerland to be a valley or a plain, but it is actually the shore of Lake Maggiore. At just 193 meters above sea level, this spot sits right on the border with Italy. From there, the land rises rapidly. Within a few hours of driving, you can go from palm trees near the lake to snowfields high in the Alps. This extreme variation in height over such short distances is one of the things that makes Switzerland's landscape so... There are more than 1,800 glaciers across the country. Switzerland is one of Europe's most glacier-rich countries. It has more than 1,800 glaciers, covering about 1,200 square kilometers. These glaciers act like frozen reservoirs, slowly releasing water throughout the year. They sculpted many of the valleys and lakes that define modern Switzerland. Today, however, they are shrinking quickly due to rising temperatures. Scientists warn that many smaller glaciers could disappear within decades, reshaping Switzerland's geography once again. Most people live on the central plateau, not in the mountains. When you think of Switzerland, you probably imagine remote mountain villages. But in reality, about 70% of the Swiss population lives on the central plateau. This region stretches from Lake Geneva to Lake Constance. It is where you find the biggest cities such as Zurich, Bern, and Lausanne, and much of the industry and agriculture. The mountains may define Switzerland's image, but the plateau is where most Swiss people actually live their everyday lives. Switzerland regularly experiences earthquakes. Switzerland is not the first place you think of when you hear the word earthquake, but the country is seismically active. The ongoing collision between the African and European plates causes much of that seismic activity. Tectonic plates still shape the Alps today. As a result, Switzerland is shaken by small to moderate earthquakes every year. Most of them are too weak to cause serious damage, but they are a reminder that the mountains are still slowly moving, and the land is never completely still. Switzerland's flag changes shape at sea. On land, Switzerland's flag is square, which makes it stand out from almost every other national flag in the world. But at sea, that changes. When flown on ships, the Swiss flag becomes rectangular, just like the flags of other countries. This follows maritime customs and makes it easier to use the flag on standard ship flagpoles. So the only time Switzerland's flag is not square is when it is used on the ocean by a country that does not even have a coastline. Thanks for exploring these amazing and surprising facts about Switzerland with me. Now it is your turn. Which country should we uncover next? Drop your suggestions in the comments below. And if you have more cool geography facts to share, do not hold back. Cannot wait to see you in the next. Switzerland's flag changes shape at sea. On land, Switzerland's flag is square, which makes it stand out from almost every other national flag in the world. But at sea, that changes. When flown on ships, the Swiss flag becomes rectangular, just like the flags of other countries. This follows maritime customs and makes it easier to use the flag on standard ship flagpoles. So, the only time Switzerland's flag is not square is when it is used on the ocean, by a country that does not even have a coastline.